One of the quiet truths about human nature is that people rarely recognize the value of something that is always available. This is not necessarily a sign of selfishness or disrespect. It is a reflection of how the human mind is wired. Psychologists describe a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation, the tendency for people to become accustomed to what they experience repeatedly. What once felt exciting gradually becomes ordinary. What once inspired gratitude eventually feels expected. This same principle influences relationships, friendships, workplaces, and even the way people perceive our time and attention. When your presence is constant, predictable, and unlimited, others often stop noticing the effort behind it. They begin to assume it will always be there. Think about the sunrise. It is one of the most extraordinary sights in nature, painting the sky with colors beyond imagination. Yet because it appears every morning, countless people barely pause to admire it. Familiarity has transformed something magnificent into something ordinary. Human relationships often follow a similar pattern. When someone is endlessly available, always saying yes, always responding immediately, always sacrificing their own priorities, their generosity can slowly become invisible. The value has not disappeared, but the perception of that value has diminished. This understanding should not lead to resentment or emotional distance. It should lead to wisdom. The lesson is not to become unavailable for the sake of creating artificial scarcity. It is to recognize that your time, energy, and attention are among the most valuable resources you possess. Every hour you give away is an hour that can never be reclaimed. Every moment of attention invested in one place is attention that cannot be invested somewhere else. When you begin to understand the true worth of these resources, you naturally become more intentional about where you place them. Many people believe they earn love, respect, or recognition by constantly proving their usefulness. They answer every request without hesitation. They abandon personal goals to satisfy the expectations of others. They become the first to volunteer, the last to leave, and the person everyone depends upon. At first, this may earn appreciation, but over time, constant availability often transforms appreciation into expectation. What was once seen as kindness becomes viewed as obligation. The extraordinary quietly becomes ordinary. The truly influential individuals understand a different principle. They do not measure their value by how often they are seen, but by the quality they bring whenever they are present. Their conversations have depth because they spend time learning. Their advice carries weight because they reflect before they speak. Their presence feels calm because they have learned to manage their own emotions. They are not absent because they wish to be missed. They are occasionally unavailable because they are committed to building a meaningful life. Their priorities naturally create healthy distance, and that distance preserves the significance of their presence. History repeatedly demonstrates that meaningful contributions require periods of solitude, focus, and disciplined work. Great artists disappear into their craft before revealing a masterpiece. Great leaders spend countless hours thinking before making decisions that shape nations. Great athletes withdraw from comfort to train while others rest. None of them isolate themselves to manipulate people's emotions. They simply understand that excellence demands uninterrupted attention. Their temporary absence is the price of lasting achievement. There is another psychological principle worth considering. People tend to assign greater value to what requires intention and respect. This does not mean making yourself difficult to reach or pretending to be busy. It means recognizing that your life should not revolve entirely around the expectations of others. A person who protects time for learning, health, family, creativity, and personal growth quietly communicates self-respect. Without saying a single word, they demonstrate that their life has direction. Others often respond to this consistency with greater respect because disciplined priorities inspire confidence. This lesson also requires honesty with yourself. Ask whether your constant availability comes from genuine generosity or from a hidden fear of disappointing others. Many people struggle to say no because they worry that boundaries will make them less likable. Yet authentic relationships are strengthened, not weakened, by healthy boundaries. People who genuinely value you will respect your commitment to your own growth. Those who only valued your availability may become uncomfortable, but that discomfort reveals the nature of the relationship rather than diminishing your worth. Ultimately, becoming someone whose absence is noticed is not about disappearing. It is about ensuring that when you are present, you bring wisdom instead of exhaustion, purpose instead of distraction, and genuine attention instead of divided focus. Let your presence become memorable because it reflects character, integrity, and intention. Build a life so rich with learning, discipline, and meaningful pursuits that your availability is guided by purpose rather than habit. When your presence is rooted in quality instead of constant accessibility, people do not remember you because you were always there. They remember you because every moment you shared carried substance, authenticity, and lasting value. Every interaction in your life quietly teaches people how to treat you. This lesson is rarely spoken aloud, yet it shapes friendships, families, workplaces, and even the way strangers respond to you. Human beings are remarkably observant. They pay less attention to what you say about yourself and far more attention to what you consistently allow. If you repeatedly sacrifice your own needs to avoid disappointing others, people gradually begin to see that sacrifice as normal rather than exceptional. What once seemed generous becomes expected. This is not necessarily because people intend to take advantage of you. It is often because the human mind adapts to repeated patterns. Expectations are built through repetition. That is why self-respect must first become a habit within you before it can become visible to anyone else. Healthy boundaries are not acts of rejection or hostility. They are expressions of clarity. They communicate that your time has value, your energy is limited, and your principles are not available for negotiation simply to gain approval. Psychology consistently shows that people who maintain clear, respectful boundaries tend to experience stronger relationships over the long term. Why? Because predictability creates trust. Others know where they stand with you. They understand that your kindness is genuine rather than driven by fear of conflict or the desperate need to be liked. Many people confuse being agreeable with being respected. These are not the same. Agreeableness may earn temporary approval, but respect grows from consistency, integrity, and emotional stability. A person who changes their beliefs, opinions, or priorities every time they encounter pressure becomes difficult to trust. On the other hand, someone who calmly stands by their values without hostility sends a powerful psychological message. My decisions are guided by principles, not by the emotions of the moment. This quiet consistency often carries far greater influence than loud confidence ever could. Consider the people you admire most. They are rarely those who constantly seek validation or explain every decision they make. Instead, they possess an inner calm that comes from knowing who they are. They do not rush to justify every choice because their identity is rooted in self-awareness rather than public opinion. They can say no without guilt, accept criticism without collapsing, and walk away from situations that repeatedly compromise their dignity. Their confidence does not come from believing they are superior to others. It comes from believing they are responsible for honoring their own standards. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that setting boundaries will push others away. In reality, healthy boundaries often improve relationships because they remove confusion and resentment. When you constantly ignore your own limits, frustration quietly accumulates beneath the surface. Eventually, that hidden frustration erupts in anger, withdrawal, or emotional exhaustion. Clear boundaries prevent this cycle. They allow generosity to remain genuine because it is offered freely rather than demanded by obligation. You begin helping others from a place of strength instead of depletion. Emotional intelligence also plays a vital role in maintaining self-respect. There will always be moments when people misunderstand your decisions. Some may interpret your boundaries as selfishness simply because they benefited from your previous lack of them. It is important to remember that another person's disappointment does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. Mature individuals recognize that every healthy relationship requires mutual respect for each person's time, priorities, and emotional well-being. You cannot control every interpretation of your actions, but you can ensure that your actions remain aligned with your values. Discipline strengthens these invisible boundaries. Every time you protect your schedule to pursue meaningful work, choose rest instead of constant availability, or decline opportunities that conflict with your purpose, you reinforce a powerful belief within yourself. Your life deserves intentional direction. Over time, this discipline shapes not only your habits, but also your identity. Others begin to recognize that your attention is given with purpose, not distributed carelessly. Ironically, the less you chase acceptance, the more authentic respect you often receive. Ultimately, self-respect is not something you demand from the world. It is something you quietly demonstrate through your daily choices. It is reflected in the conversations you participate in, the commitments you keep, the promises you make to yourself, and the situations you have the courage to leave behind. These invisible boundaries become the architecture of your character. They do not isolate you from others. They create the conditions for healthier, more honest, and more meaningful relationships. When you value your own peace, time, and purpose, you teach the world to recognize that value as well, not through force, but through unwavering consistency. One of the greatest transformations a person can experience begins the moment they stop allowing other people's opinions to determine their sense of worth. Emotional independence is not about rejecting relationships or pretending that approval never matters. Human beings are naturally social creatures, and we all appreciate encouragement, respect, and connection. The difference lies in whether those things become pleasant additions to your life or the foundation of your identity. When your emotional stability depends entirely on how others respond to you, you unknowingly surrender control over your peace. Every compliment lifts you higher than it should, and every criticism pushes you lower than it deserves. You begin living as if your value changes with every conversation, every message left unanswered, and every opinion expressed about you. This creates a fragile life because your confidence is no longer built from within. It is borrowed from circumstances that constantly change. Psychology teaches that people who possess a strong internal sense of self are generally more resilient under pressure because they evaluate themselves according to personal values rather than external reactions. They are not immune to disappointment, but they recover more quickly because their identity is rooted in something deeper than temporary approval. They understand that rejection is often a reflection of compatibility, timing, expectations, or differing perspectives, not a final verdict on their worth. This mindset frees them from exhausting cycles of overthinking every interaction. Instead of constantly asking, "Did they like me?" They begin asking, did I remain true to my principles? That single shift changes everything. It redirects attention from chasing acceptance to building character. Imagine two people entering the same room. The first spends the entire evening trying to impress everyone, carefully adjusting every word to gain approval. They monitor every facial expression, worry about every pause in conversation, and leave wondering whether they were liked. The second person arrives with genuine curiosity, confidence, and respect for others, but without the desperate need to win everyone's admiration. They contribute thoughtfully, listen carefully, and remain authentic regardless of who agrees with them. Ironically, it is often the second person who leaves the stronger impression. Why? Because confidence grounded in self-respect feels calm rather than demanding. People naturally trust individuals who appear comfortable with themselves. This principle extends far beyond social situations. In professional life, emotional independence allows you to accept constructive criticism without feeling personally attacked. You can learn from mistakes because your ego is no longer fighting to prove perfection. In friendships, it helps you give generously without keeping an invisible score. In family relationships, it allows you to love deeply while maintaining healthy boundaries. And in moments of solitude, it teaches you that being alone does not mean being incomplete. Solitude becomes an opportunity for reflection instead of a punishment created by loneliness. History repeatedly reminds us that those who created lasting impact rarely allowed public opinion to dictate every decision. Innovators, artists, leaders, and thinkers often faced misunderstanding before receiving recognition. Had they depended entirely on immediate approval, many of their greatest contributions would never have existed. Their confidence did not come from believing they were superior to others. It came from remaining committed to their purpose, even when applause was absent. Emotional independence also strengthens your relationships because it removes hidden expectations. When you stop demanding that others constantly reassure your worth, your interactions become more genuine. You appreciate kindness without becoming dependent on it. You welcome love without fearing every moment it seems distant. You celebrate praise without allowing it to define your identity. This creates a quiet stability that people instinctively respect. Others begin to feel safe around someone who is emotionally grounded because that person is less reactive, less defensive, and more capable of honest communication. The paradox is remarkable. The less desperately you seek validation, the more naturally respect tends to follow. Not because people are attracted to indifference, but because they recognize the strength of someone who carries themselves with quiet conviction. True influence has never belonged to the loudest voice in the room or the person who demands constant attention. It belongs to the individual who remains composed under pressure, consistent in their values, and secure enough to let their actions speak louder than their need for approval. That is emotional independence. It is not isolation. It is freedom, the freedom to live according to your highest standards, to grow regardless of recognition, and to build a life whose foundation cannot be shaken by the changing opinions of the world. Silence has always been misunderstood. Many people assume that if they stop speaking, explaining, or constantly making themselves available, they will be forgotten. They believe they must continuously remind others of their value through words, attention, or effort. Yet psychology reveals a different reality. The human mind is naturally drawn to what it has not fully understood. When every thought is explained, every emotion is displayed, and every action is announced, there is little room for curiosity or reflection. But when a person speaks with intention and allows moments of quiet confidence, others often begin to think more deeply about them. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is communication expressed through restraint, emotional control, and self-awareness. This does not mean withdrawing from people to create uncertainty or intentionally making others anxious. Instead, it means resisting the urge to react to every situation, defend every misunderstanding, or answer every criticism. Emotionally mature people understand that not every opinion deserves a response, and not every conflict deserves their energy. By choosing thoughtful silence over impulsive reaction, they demonstrate a level of self-discipline that words alone cannot convey. Calmness under pressure often speaks louder than the most passionate argument because it reflects inner stability rather than emotional dependence. Modern life encourages constant expression. Social media rewards immediate reactions, endless updates, and the belief that every moment must be shared. This culture can create the illusion that visibility equals significance. In reality, genuine influence is rarely built on constant exposure. People who leave a lasting impression are often those who contribute with purpose rather than noise. They know that every unnecessary explanation weakens the impact of the explanations that truly matter. Their words carry weight precisely because they are chosen carefully instead of being scattered carelessly. Silence also creates space for observation. When you are no longer consumed by the need to speak, you begin to notice patterns that others miss. You recognize emotions hidden behind confident faces, insecurities disguised as arrogance, and opportunities concealed within ordinary conversations. Listening becomes a powerful advantage because understanding people is impossible if your own voice constantly fills the room. Those who master observation develop emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence allows them to respond wisely instead of merely reacting quickly. There is another psychological principle at work. The human brain naturally seeks completion. When information is incomplete, people often continue thinking about it long after the moment has passed. This is why thoughtful pauses, measured responses, and quiet confidence can leave a stronger impression than endless conversation. It is not because silence is magical, but because restraint invites reflection. People remember interactions that challenge them to think rather than conversations where every answer was immediately provided. The absence of unnecessary words encourages the presence of meaningful thought. Silence is equally important in moments of criticism. Many people feel compelled to defend themselves the instant they are misunderstood. Yet history repeatedly shows that character is revealed over time, not through hurried explanations. A single emotional reaction can overshadow years of disciplined behavior, while consistent integrity eventually answers accusations more effectively than endless arguments. This requires patience, a quality that separates emotionally resilient individuals from those who are controlled by the opinions of others. Choosing not to engage in every battle is not surrender. It is the wisdom to recognize that peace is often more valuable than being temporarily proven right. Most importantly, silence creates room for personal growth. Every hour spent arguing, seeking validation, or explaining yourself is an hour that cannot be invested in learning, creating, improving, or serving a greater purpose. When your attention shifts from convincing others to developing yourself, your progress begins to speak on your behalf. Achievements become your introduction, consistency becomes your reputation, and your character becomes your voice. In the end, the most memorable people are rarely the loudest. They are the individuals whose quiet confidence, thoughtful actions, and unwavering principles leave an impression long after the conversation has ended. Their silence is never empty. It is filled with purpose, discipline, and the calm strength that comes from knowing their value does not depend on constant recognition. The world rarely rewards potential. It rewards visible transformation. There is a profound psychological difference between talking about becoming someone and quietly becoming that person. Many people spend years announcing their ambitions, defending their dreams, and seeking recognition before they have earned it. Yet the individuals who leave the deepest impression usually follow a different path. They invest their energy in growth rather than performance. They understand that lasting respect cannot be demanded. It must be built through consistent action. Human beings are naturally drawn to evidence. We trust what we can observe more than what we are told. This principle shapes everything from personal relationships to professional success. A person who repeatedly speaks about discipline but never follows through gradually loses credibility, not because their intentions are bad, but because their words and actions no longer align. In contrast, someone who quietly develops new skills, improves their habits, and consistently delivers results creates a reputation that speaks long before they do. Their growth becomes impossible to ignore because it is visible in the way they think, communicate, solve problems, and carry themselves. Consider the seed buried beneath the soil. For weeks, nothing appears to happen on the surface. To an impatient observer, it looks lifeless. Yet beneath the ground, roots are spreading, strengthening, and preparing for future growth. When the plant finally emerges, people admire its beauty, but they rarely think about the unseen process that made it possible. Personal development works the same way. The most meaningful transformations often occur in silence. They happen during the early mornings when no one is watching, the evenings spent studying instead of seeking entertainment, the difficult conversations that build emotional maturity, and the countless moments of choosing discipline over immediate comfort. These hidden efforts eventually become visible through confidence, wisdom, and capability. Modern culture often encourages people to announce every goal before they have taken the first meaningful step. Social media rewards declarations, while real life rewards execution. There is nothing wrong with sharing aspirations, but announcing progress is never a substitute for making progress. Every hour spent trying to convince others of your potential is an hour that could have been invested in developing it. Genuine confidence grows from evidence collected through action, not from compliments gathered through attention. Psychologists often describe the concept of self-efficacy, the belief in your ability to handle challenges and achieve meaningful goals. This belief is not created by motivational speeches alone. It is built through repeated experiences of overcoming difficulty. Every completed task, every new skill mastered, every obstacle faced with courage becomes proof that you are capable of more than you previously believed. Over time, these experiences reshape your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hopes to improve and begin seeing yourself as someone who consistently does the work required for improvement. Growth also changes the way others respond to you, though this should never be the primary objective. People naturally place greater trust in those whose actions consistently reflect competence and integrity. A person who remains calm under pressure, keeps their promises, continues learning, and accepts responsibility without excuses, develops quiet influence. They do not need to remind others of their value because their behavior demonstrates it every day. This influence is not built on charisma alone. It is built on reliability, humility, and continuous self-improvement. Imagine two individuals beginning the same journey. One spends months explaining their plans, seeking validation, and waiting for encouragement before taking action. The other simply begins. They read one chapter each day, practice one skill at a time, improve one habit each week, and remain patient with the process. At first, there seems to be little difference between them. But as the months pass, the gap widens. The second individual possesses something the first cannot imitate overnight: accumulated growth. Their confidence is steadier because it has been earned. Their knowledge is deeper because it has been applied. Their resilience is stronger because it has been tested. Eventually, their results speak louder than any announcement ever could. One of the greatest misconceptions about success is that dramatic change happens overnight. In reality, transformation is usually the product of small decisions repeated consistently over long periods. A single workout rarely changes a body, but years of disciplined training can. Reading one book may not transform a mind, but reading hundreds gradually reshapes the way a person understands the world. One difficult conversation may not redefine a relationship, but consistently communicating with honesty and empathy can build trust that lasts a lifetime. Greatness is rarely created by extraordinary moments alone. More often, it is built through ordinary actions performed with extraordinary consistency. As you continue growing, resist the temptation to compare your progress with others. Comparison steals attention from the only competition that truly matters, becoming better than you were yesterday. Every person carries different experiences, opportunities, and challenges. Your journey does not need to resemble anyone else's to be meaningful. The most fulfilling victories are not those that earn applause from strangers, but those that reflect personal integrity and steady progress toward your highest values. Remember that confidence without competence often appears fragile, while competence developed through disciplined effort creates quiet certainty. You no longer feel compelled to prove yourself because your daily actions have already done the proving. This is the power of genuine personal growth. It transforms not only your abilities but also your identity. It changes the questions you ask yourself. Instead of wondering whether others recognize your potential, you begin asking whether you are honoring your own potential through today's choices. When your life becomes centered on continuous learning, disciplined action, emotional maturity, and meaningful contribution, recognition becomes a byproduct rather than the destination. Your transformation becomes visible in ways that cannot be faked, in your decisions, your resilience, your humility, and your unwavering commitment to improvement. At that point, you no longer chase attention. Your character naturally commands respect because the strongest statement a person can make is not what they promise to become, but what they consistently choose to become every single day. Discipline is one of the rare qualities that quietly transforms the way the world responds to you. It is not loud, dramatic, or attention-seeking. In fact, most disciplined people are rarely the ones making the biggest promises or demanding recognition. They simply show up with consistency, protect their priorities, and allow time to reveal the strength of their character. This is why discipline carries a kind of invisible authority. People instinctively trust those whose actions remain steady, regardless of changing emotions or circumstances. While motivation rises and falls like the tide, discipline remains anchored. It becomes the bridge between who you are today and the person you are capable of becoming tomorrow. Many people misunderstand discipline as a rigid routine of waking up before sunrise, following strict schedules, or working endlessly without rest. Those habits may be part of someone's lifestyle, but true discipline begins much deeper. It starts with learning to direct your attention toward what truly matters and refusing to let every distraction dictate your decisions. In an age where every notification competes for your focus and every opinion demands a reaction, the ability to protect your attention has become one of the greatest forms of personal power. Every moment you consciously choose purpose over distraction, you strengthen your mind in ways that are invisible at first but undeniable over time. Imagine your attention as the most valuable currency you possess. Once spent, it can never be recovered. Every unnecessary argument, every hour wasted comparing yourself to others, every impulse that pulls you away from your goals carries a hidden cost. Disciplined individuals understand this truth. They do not guard their attention because they believe they are better than others. They guard it because they understand its value. They know that where attention goes, energy follows, and where energy consistently flows, results eventually appear. Success, therefore, is often less about extraordinary talent and more about the ordinary choices repeated with extraordinary consistency. Protecting your energy is equally important. Energy is not simply physical strength, it is emotional and mental capacity. Some conversations leave you inspired, while others leave you exhausted. Some habits sharpen your thinking, while others cloud your judgment. A disciplined person learns to recognize these differences. They become intentional about the environments they enter, the media they consume, and the people they allow to influence their mindset. This is not about isolating yourself or rejecting others. It is about understanding that your inner world shapes your outer reality. If your energy is constantly scattered across unnecessary worries and endless distractions, there will be little left to invest in meaningful work or genuine relationships. Discipline also means protecting your purpose. Purpose is easily forgotten when life becomes filled with endless obligations and constant noise. Every day presents countless opportunities to drift away from what matters most. The disciplined individual repeatedly returns to the question, does this decision move me closer to the life I want to build? That simple question becomes a compass. It prevents temporary emotions from making permanent decisions. It replaces impulsive reactions with thoughtful action. It reminds you that every meaningful achievement is built not through one grand moment of inspiration, but through hundreds of quiet decisions that no one else may ever see. One of the greatest misconceptions is that discipline limits freedom. In reality, the opposite is true. Undisciplined habits often create invisible chains. Procrastination steals opportunities. Emotional impulsiveness damages relationships. Poor financial choices create stress. Inconsistent effort delays dreams. What appears to be freedom in the present often becomes regret in the future. Discipline, on the other hand, may require temporary discomfort, but it creates lasting freedom. The discipline to learn a valuable skill creates career opportunities. The discipline to manage your emotions builds stronger relationships. The discipline to care for your health gives you the energy to pursue your ambitions. Every act of self-control today becomes an investment in greater freedom tomorrow. There is another quiet truth about disciplined people. They naturally make their presence more meaningful. Because they respect their own time, others begin to respect it as well. Because they do not constantly seek attention, their words carry greater weight when they choose to speak. Because they are intentional with their commitments, people learn that their promises can be trusted. Their presence becomes associated with reliability, focus, and calm confidence. They do not need to remind others of their worth because their consistency communicates it more powerfully than any speech ever could. Ultimately, discipline is an act of self-respect, repeated every single day. It is the decision to honor your future even when your present emotions encourage comfort instead of growth. It is choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term gratification. It is understanding that greatness is rarely created in moments of excitement, but in ordinary days when no one is watching. When you protect your attention, your energy, and your purpose with unwavering consistency, something remarkable begins to happen. Your life becomes more intentional, your mind becomes clearer, your confidence grows naturally, and your presence gains a quiet significance. You no longer need to convince people of your value because the quality of your character speaks before you ever say a word. That is the silent power of discipline, and it is one of the strongest foundations upon which a meaningful, respected, and unforgettable life can be built. Discipline is one of the rare qualities that quietly transforms the way the world responds to you. It is not loud, dramatic, or attention-seeking. In fact, most disciplined people are rarely the ones making the biggest promises or demanding recognition. They simply show up with consistency, protect their priorities, and allow time to reveal the strength of their character. This is why discipline carries a kind of invisible authority. People instinctively trust those whose actions remain steady, regardless of changing emotions or circumstances. While motivation rises and falls like the tide, discipline remains anchored. It becomes the bridge between who you are today and the person you are capable of becoming tomorrow. Many people misunderstand discipline as a rigid routine of waking up before sunrise, following strict schedules, or working endlessly without rest. Those habits may be part of someone's lifestyle, but true discipline begins much deeper. It starts with learning to direct your attention toward what truly matters and refusing to let every distraction dictate your decisions. In an age where every notification competes for your focus and every opinion demands a reaction, The ability to protect your attention has become one of the greatest forms of personal power. Every moment you consciously choose purpose over distraction, you strengthen your mind in ways that are invisible at first, but undeniable over time. Imagine your attention as the most valuable currency you possess. Once spent, it can never be recovered. Every unnecessary argument, every hour wasted comparing yourself to others, every impulse that pulls you away from your goals carries a hidden cost. Disciplined individuals understand this truth. They do not guard their attention because they believe they are better than others. They guard it because they understand its value. They know that where attention goes, energy follows, and where energy consistently flows, results eventually appear. Success, therefore, is often less about extraordinary talent and more about the ordinary choices repeated with extraordinary consistency. Protecting your energy is equally important. Energy is not simply physical strength, it is emotional and mental capacity. Some conversations leave you inspired, while others leave you exhausted. Some habits sharpen your thinking, while others cloud your judgment. A disciplined person learns to recognize these differences. They become intentional about the environments they enter, the media they consume, and the people they allow to influence their mindset. This is not about isolating yourself or rejecting others. It is about understanding that your inner world shapes your outer reality. If your energy is constantly scattered across unnecessary worries and endless distractions, there will be little left to invest in meaningful work or genuine relationships. Discipline also means protecting your purpose. Purpose is easily forgotten when life becomes filled with endless obligations and constant noise. Every day presents countless opportunities to drift away from what matters most. The disciplined individual repeatedly returns to the question, does this decision move me closer to the life I want to build? That simple question becomes a compass. It prevents temporary emotions from making permanent decisions. It replaces impulsive reactions with thoughtful action. It reminds you that every meaningful achievement is built not through one grand moment of inspiration, but through hundreds of quiet decisions that no one else may ever see. One of the greatest misconceptions is that discipline limits freedom. In reality, the opposite is true. Undisciplined habits often create invisible chains. Procrastination steals opportunities. Emotional impulsiveness damages relationships. Poor financial choices create stress. Inconsistent effort delays dreams. What appears to be freedom in the present often becomes regret in the future. Discipline, on the other hand, may require temporary discomfort, but it creates lasting freedom. The discipline to learn a valuable skill creates career opportunities. The discipline to manage your emotions builds stronger relationships. The discipline to care for your health gives you the energy to pursue your ambitions. Every act of self-control today becomes an investment in greater freedom tomorrow. There is another quiet truth about disciplined people. They naturally make their presence more meaningful. Because they respect their own time, others begin to respect it as well. Because they do not constantly seek attention, their words carry greater weight when they choose to speak. Because they are intentional with their commitments, people learn that their promises can be trusted. Their presence becomes associated with reliability, focus, and calm confidence. They do not need to remind others of their worth because their consistency communicates it more powerfully than any speech ever could. Ultimately, discipline is an act of self-respect repeated every single day. It is the decision to honor your future even when your present emotions encourage comfort instead of growth. It is choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term gratification. It is understanding that greatness is rarely created in moments of excitement, but in ordinary days when no one is watching. When you protect your attention, your energy, and your purpose with unwavering consistency, something remarkable begins to happen. Your life becomes more intentional, your mind becomes clearer, your confidence grows naturally, and your presence gains a quiet significance. You no longer need to convince people of your value because the quality of your character speaks before you ever say a word. That is the silent power of discipline, and it is one of the strongest foundations upon which a meaningful, respected, and unforgettable life can be built. Many people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to appear mysterious. They carefully calculate when to reply to messages, speak as little as possible in conversations, or create an image that seems difficult to understand. They believe that mystery is something that can be manufactured through distance or silence alone. But true mystery is never the result of performance. It is the natural byproduct of a life filled with purpose. When your days are occupied with meaningful work, personal growth, learning, reflection, and disciplined habits, you simply have less time and less desire to constantly explain yourself to the world. Your attention is invested in becoming, not performing. Human psychology is naturally drawn toward people whose actions create curiosity. We are fascinated by those who seem deeply committed to something larger than social approval. This curiosity is not created because they are hiding secrets. It emerges because their identity is rooted in substance rather than appearance. They are not rushing to announce every achievement or narrate every emotion. Instead, they allow their actions to speak over time. Their consistency tells a more compelling story than endless explanations ever could. Consider the difference between someone who talks constantly about future success and someone who quietly develops new skills every single day. The first person creates temporary excitement through words. The second creates lasting respect through evidence. People may applaud bold declarations for a moment, but they trust visible progress far more than ambitious promises. Real confidence does not feel compelled to broadcast itself. It is comfortable allowing results to arrive before recognition does. There is another psychological principle at work here. The human mind values what it must discover. When every thought, plan, opinion, and accomplishment is immediately shared, there is very little left for others to wonder about. Curiosity fades because nothing remains unexplored. On the other hand, individuals who are fully engaged in their own mission often reveal themselves gradually. Each conversation uncovers another layer of wisdom, another experience, another lesson learned through effort. Their depth is discovered rather than advertised, and discovery is far more memorable than display. This does not mean becoming emotionally distant or refusing genuine connection. Healthy relationships are built on openness, trust, and honest communication. The difference lies in motivation. Sharing your experiences to build understanding is very different from constantly seeking validation through exposure. Emotionally mature people know that not every achievement requires applause, not every setback requires an audience, and not every thought needs immediate expression. They recognize that some of life's most meaningful transformations occur quietly, away from the noise of constant attention. History repeatedly reminds us that individuals who leave the greatest impact are often those who dedicate themselves to mastery instead of image. Their focus remains on refining their character, strengthening their discipline, and expanding their knowledge. They are too occupied with meaningful pursuits to measure their worth by how frequently others notice them. Ironically, this very independence often makes them more respected. Their presence carries weight because it is supported by substance. Imagine two trees growing side by side. One is decorated with bright artificial ornaments that attract attention from a distance, while the other spends years extending its roots deep into the earth. At first, the decorated tree appears more impressive, but when strong winds arrive, appearances offer no protection. The tree with deep roots remains standing because its strength was developed beneath the surface. Human character works in much the same way. The qualities that create lasting influence, integrity, wisdom, resilience, patience, and discipline, are formed quietly, long before they become visible to the world. The greatest form of mystery is not pretending to be unavailable or difficult to understand. It is becoming so deeply committed to your purpose that your life naturally develops depth. People sense when someone is living with intention. They notice the calm confidence of a person who no longer feels pressured to impress everyone. Such individuals do not create curiosity through calculated behavior, they inspire it through authentic growth. Their lives remind us that the most powerful presence belongs to those who spend less time managing their image and more time building their character. In the end, the world may initially notice performance, but it always remembers substance. The greatest transformation begins the moment you stop asking whether other people would notice your absence and start asking a far more powerful question: would you recognize the person you are becoming if you met yourself today? This shift changes everything. Too often, people measure their worth by the attention they receive, the messages they get, the invitations they are offered, or the praise they hear from others. But external recognition is unpredictable. It rises and falls with circumstances, opinions, and changing priorities. Building your identity on it is like building a house on shifting sand. Lasting confidence is built differently. It grows from the quiet knowledge that you are living according to values that remain steady whether anyone is watching or not. When you become someone you genuinely admire, you no longer chase validation because your daily actions become proof of your character. You begin to value integrity over popularity, consistency over temporary excitement, and purpose over applause. Think about the people whose presence leaves a lasting impression. It is rarely because they demanded attention or constantly reminded everyone of their importance. More often, it is because they carried themselves with calm confidence, fulfilled their commitments, listened with intention, and treated others with genuine respect. Their absence is noticed because their presence consistently added something meaningful. This is a lesson rooted in both psychology and human experience. People remember the quality of an experience far longer than its frequency. A single conversation filled with wisdom and sincerity often outweighs 100 empty exchanges. Likewise, a person who lives with discipline, emotional balance, and authenticity creates memories that linger long after they have left the room. Developing this kind of character requires patience. It means choosing habits that strengthen your mind instead of merely satisfying your impulses. It means reading when distraction is easier, practicing when excuses are available, reflecting when blaming others feels more comfortable, and continuing to grow even when no one applauds your progress. These quiet decisions rarely attract immediate attention, yet they slowly reshape your identity. Over time, you become more dependable, more emotionally resilient, and more secure in who you are. You stop needing to convince people of your value because your actions speak with greater authority than your words ever could. There is also a deeper freedom that comes from becoming someone you would never want to abandon. When your life is built around meaningful goals, healthy relationships, disciplined routines, and a clear sense of purpose, solitude no longer feels like emptiness. It becomes a place where your best ideas emerge, where your confidence is renewed, and where your character is strengthened. You are no longer running from yourself. You enjoy your own company because you have invested in becoming a person of substance. This is one of the highest forms of emotional intelligence. Instead of constantly seeking to be chosen, you choose to become better. Instead of wondering who values you, you focus on living in a way that reflects your deepest principles. Ironically, this is when your presence becomes unforgettable. Not because you tried to create mystery, distance, or emotional uncertainty, but because you consistently brought wisdom, stability, kindness, and purpose wherever you went. People naturally notice the absence of someone who contributes peace instead of drama, clarity instead of confusion, encouragement instead of criticism, and strength instead of insecurity. Yet by the time they recognize your value, it is no longer your primary concern. Your greatest achievement is not that others miss you when you are gone. It is that you have become someone whose standards, discipline, and inner peace you would never willingly leave behind. That is the kind of life that cannot be measured by attention alone. It is measured by character, and character always leaves the deepest legacy.